Let's check your device. I'm going to do not disturb.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, hold on a sec. No, this one actually has HDMI here. Yeah, hold on one second. Okay. That's great resolution. It's just because I grabbed it from your website. Oh, that graphic. Yeah. I'll just leave this up for now. So we should introduce ourselves as who we actually are.
Yes.
Unlike my kids who are.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Chag Sameach. First of all, I'm Rabbi Dan Moskowitz, and welcome to Temple Sholom. And I've been asked, and I'll do my best to enforce that all of us introduce ourselves. We don't always know who we are, but we shouldn't expect that you do either. So we will be sure to use our names and introduce ourselves as we go, even though we're a small and intimate community in some ways. I can't hear you, just talk. So welcome. We're glad that you're here this evening. This is a partnership that grows out of our partnership with the Rav, and there are other synagogues that are doing their own Tikkun, Leil, Shavuot this evening that are not able to be here with us because of distance. But it is a remarkable thing when all of our community is studying Torah in the afternoon and the evening. Or Sholom is here, but Rabbi Arik is not. His father of blessed memory passed away just a few days ago. And so he is with his family right now, and we think of him and pray that his father's memory is for a blessing. So I've been asked to just sort of tee up the evening before we get into our teaching. To give you just a little sense of the evening, we're going to do a text study together for about an hour and a bit, hour and a half maybe, hour and 15 minutes. And then we're going to daven Mariv together, which is another beautiful thing about our community when Harel, Beth Israel, Temple Sholom, or Sholom can come together and pray together. There goes Rabbi Philip Gibbs. And then we're going to have cheesecake. We have the incredible Alyssa Weinberg to thank for some delicious cheesecake, and Cantor Cohen went out and got vegan cheesecake as well. I just don't want to get them confused with each other. So, oh, and gluten-free too? Wow. So, as a way of introduction, because this is kind of an odd topic for Shavuot, it's not in any direct sense like hard-hitting Torah, although I think we're going to get there. I'll just start in this way, and everybody has their own story and they're all going to share, but I'm a rabbi because of Jewish summer camp and a game of catch with the camp rabbi that I'd have at Chofesh at free time every day. But I'm a spiritual person because of the Grateful Dead. I know, I don't look like your typical Deadhead. Their music is transportative for me. I'm not sure that that's an actual word. But it takes me to different places that I can't get to on my own. A groove, a jam will open up my mind in ways that I just haven't experienced anyplace else. And I can't do that on my own, and I can't do that even by myself in terms of the skills that I have. I'm not a musician. I'm not, as my congregation will tell you, I'm not a singer. I really don't have any musical abilities, and my wife will tell you I'm not a great dancer, which fits in very well if you've ever seen anybody at a Grateful Dead show. But it takes me to this new dimension, and there is a groove, a nigun that happens for me when listening to their music that opens up my mind. Well, let me quote the song I'm going to teach. It's a hand-me-down, the thoughts are broken, perhaps they're better even left unsung. I don't know, I don't really care, let there be songs to fill the air. I'm going to teach that in a little bit, but that to me is a Torah. It's not the Torah, but it is a Torah that opens up Torah for me. And I yearn to do that in prayer. I yearn for prayer that does that for me. And sometimes I've experienced it at some of these newer, not so new anymore, Minyanim at Ikar, B'nai Jeshurun in New York, Romanu in New York, where they are very collaborative, where the congregation and the Shliach Tzibor are really in conversation with each other through music and through prayer. And so when we were sitting together as colleagues talking about what should we teach tonight, I was in the process of putting together what never came to be, which was a Jewish Grateful Dead retreat that's supposed to happen next weekend, but now we're moving it to next year, and here into BC. And this was one of the ideas that popped around. And I think it had legs, and we'll find out why tonight from our colleagues, as to how music is for some of us, maybe many of us, a doorway into spirituality. Maybe if we're not fluent in Hebrew, we can be fluent in melody. And that is, at times, the doorway, the gate, to open up our mind and to open up our soul. So with that, by way of introduction, my pleasure to invite Rabbi Philip Gibbs. You're starting, right? Oh, actually, Adam Stein. Now I've introduced them both. It's my pleasure to invite Rabbi Adam Stein of Beth Israel to teach for about 20 minutes or so. Rabbi Stein.
Thank you, and thank you, Rabbi Dan, for welcoming us, and thank you for hosting us. Thank you to the Temple Sholom for being our host this year. This is my tie that I just took off because I realized that there were other male rabbis not wearing ties. But maybe you can confirm this for me. I'm sure if Rabbi Arik had not had a loss in his family and were here, he would have been wearing a... No, Rabbi Gibbs is laughing. I was going to suggest that Rabbi Arik and I would have been the ones wearing ties. And now Rabbi Infeld has put back on his tie. So I'm going to speak about turn, turn, turn. And I do have to, in the Talmud, the rabbis quote other rabbis all the time, so I have to give acknowledgement to Rabbi Infeld, who suggested this as something to speak about. I said, that's a wonderful idea, and I ran with it. And I assumed from the beginning that someone would do Leonard Cohen, and I think no one's actually doing Leonard Cohen. But also Rabbi Infeld came up with the idea for our program, and then he said, but from our shul, Rabbi Stein should speak, because it's maybe more his thing than mine. And at some point, a little bit later on, before I finish speaking, we'll play a little bit of the most well-known version of this song by the Byrds. But it's written by, anyone? Pete Seeger, yes, and the Hebrew Bible. So Pete Seeger collaborated, and I'll speak more about this, with the Hebrew Bible, with the Tanakh in 1959 to write it. Now, Pete Seeger did not come from a Jewish family. In fact, in his own words, his family was enormously Christian in the Puritan Calvinist New England tradition. So we know he wasn't Jewish, but I'll tell you later he did know the origins of this, and even knew the name Kohelet, the name that we in Judaism give to that book, or Ecclesiastes in the English. So he was born in 1919, and Pete Seeger's family was very connected to peace activism for a long, long time, even well before Pete was born. So if we go back a little bit, 1910, his family's in Berkeley, and my father went to Berkeley for undergrad. I grew up nearby in the Bay Area, as did Rabbi Dan and maybe others here. So Pete Seeger's father, Charles, established the first musicology curriculum in the United States, and he was at UC Berkeley when he did that. And the following year, 1911, he set up the music department at Berkeley. But in 1918, he had to resign. Anyone want to guess why he had to resign? Because of the war, because of his outspoken peace activism during World War I. Yes. So really, I think of Pete Seeger's family as a family of pursuers of peace, Rodfei Shalom. And if we think of Pete Seeger doing a lot of social activism and social justice work throughout his life until he passed away 12 years ago at age 94, protest music and peace work, imagine this is the kind of family he came from. His father had to resign from UC Berkeley, of all places, because of too much pacifism. If you know UC Berkeley and the protest movements that were there for a long time, you know that's huge. So I think his family really were pursuers of peace, and it makes me think of this phrase, to seek peace and pursue it, a phrase that maybe Pete Seeger or people in his family knew from their connection to the Bible as Christians. That's Psalm 34, verse 14. And probably also influential for Pete and his father, his uncle Alan, a war poet, was one of the first American soldiers to be killed in World War I. So back to the song. It became a big hit in 1965 when, I said this before, who were the ones who really made it a big hit? The Byrds, exactly. And it was their highest charting single. It hit the top of the US Billboard chart, and it was a big hit for the Byrds in England, also here in Canada. And so I want to think, though, like what's the background here? Like, how did it become such a big hit? How did it sort of leap off the pages of the Bible and become a very popular rock and folk song? So Pete Seeger's publisher had sent him a letter saying, I can't sell these protest songs. You're writing all these protest songs. I can't sell them to bands so they can record them and you can get income, get parnasa. Couldn't have been fun for Pete Seeger to hear that from his publisher. So he probably had a lot of feelings there. And he said, I was angry, fiery anger. And it's sort of, it's sort of cute to say make it look like fire there, but I think in a way, on a serious note, Pete Seeger had this fiery, righteous anger, like a biblical prophet, throughout most of his 94 years, really probably from being a teenager all the way up until his death in his mid-90s. And that's what he wanted to express, that passion and that fire and that anger to try to make the world a better place for everyone. So the prophet, Pete Seeger, who could only write songs of protest, sat down with a tape recorder, and he said to his publisher, you want different songs? I can't write other types of songs. You got to get someone else. Protest songs are the only types of songs that I know how to write. And this is the guy who wrote many songs we know. This is the same person who wrote in 1949, If I Had a Hammer, right? So these types of songs just came out of him. My dad was born in 1949. Okay, so he, right then, as he's responding to his publisher with his anger, he improvised a melody in 15 minutes flat to what became Turn, Turn, Turn. That famous melody just came right out of him, and he sent it to his publisher, who said, that is just what I'm looking for. Thank you, that'll work. We can be successful again now. I say again, I don't know if he had huge success before that, but Pete Seeger's publisher didn't send it directly to the Byrds. First, he sold it to a folk group. Anyone know? The Limelighters. Oh, okay. So they released it in 1962, and at that point, it wasn't yet called Turn, Turn, Turn. It was just called To Everything There Is a Season. And actually, that title really fits with the passage, with the 8 verses from the 3rd chapter of Kohelet, of Ecclesiastes, a little better, because the first 2 words are lakol zman. The Jewish Publication Society, which did the translation that's in the Chumash, the Torah publication at our shul, and here, I think, it says a season is set for everything. Most commonly, like in the song, to everything there's a season or a time, zman. And I think it's just become, partially because of this song, one of those iconic phrases from the Bible and within popular music, lakol zman. So when we think about these words, and here are the Limelighters, by the way. So they, they're just like this older classic folk group. You can see it's a banjo and a guitar and a double bass. And I listened to it. I couldn't find a video of them, but it was just, I just sort of saw this. Maybe I did watch a video of them. It was great. I want to sort of do my impression of it. It won't be really true to them, but it's three men singing, two low baritones and a tenor, and with these instruments, to everything turn, turn, turn. And it had like this real, like very fast beat to it, and very different than the Byrds. And you hear that because two out of the three of them had this low baritone, it really comes out. Very different than the Byrds version, but it already had, from the very first time he wrote it, Pete Seeger, it already had the turn, turn, turn phrase added into the chorus. And that's probably the main thing that's not in the biblical text. We'll look at the biblical text and the song lyrics in a minute. But let's spend a moment on this word turn, because it makes me think of a powerful passage from Pirkei Avot. And I think either about this song or something else. I was just talking, again, a week or two ago with Rabbi Infeld. This came up in conversation. Famous passage from Pirkei Avot where that word turn, at least in English, comes up. He says, Pirkei Avot from the Mishnah, he says, turn it over and turn it over again, for everything is in it. He's talking about Torah. And I read a little bit about, I didn't know too much before about the background of this statement. Rabbi Joshua Kulp, one of the founders of the conservative yeshiva in Jerusalem, wrote a great commentary on much of, or maybe all of the Mishnah, including Pirkei Avot. And he says, according to legend, Ben Bagbag and the rabbi or sage who writes the next bit of Mishnah after him, who writes the thing right after him? Yes. Who said that? Nice. Ben Heihei. I didn't remember that until I was reading this. So Ben Bagbag and Ben Heihei apparently were both converts. And by the way, we often honor and celebrate converts, those who choose Judaism, on Shavuot because of the story of Ruth that's read on this holiday. So Ben Bagbag and Ben Heihei, the community needed to hide them from the Roman authorities who forbade conversion, so they were called by these nicknames. Apparently, Rabbi Kulp thinks that Ben Bagbag and Ben Heihei were not their given names at birth. But both nicknames are in essence the letter Hey. Okay? Ben Heihei just has Hey and Hey in his name, and Ben Bagbag, Bet and Gimel, and numbers and letters in Gematria are, yes, starting to nod. Bet is 2, Gimel is 3, and you add them and you get 5. So it's just 5 twice, but equaling Hey. But putting Hey in there into their name is, there's a word for it in Latin or Greek. But when you add in God's name to a name, Eliyahu, Yeshayahu, or Avram and Sarai becoming Avraham and Sarah, adding in a Hey is like adding God's name into someone's name and like infusing their name with holiness. So that's what they did with the nicknames for these two guys. These sages. And it's actually 4 statements he has about the Torah, and really about turning it over and over and finding so many different things inside of Torah when we go deep inside. So what happened was, in 1962, we have the Limelighters releasing and singing this song. One of the backing musicians for the Limelighters was a member of the Byrds. His name is Roger McGuinn. And he really liked this song, so much so that he made an arrangement of it for someone else, really wonderful female musician. Okay, so he made an arrangement for Judy Collins, and she has a beautiful version. I've been listening to all of these the past week or two, and this is the first time it gets the title, Turn, Turn, Turn. And by the way, the exclamation points are in the title, so powerful. Now, I found this amazing video that I listened to and watched many, many times the past several days of Judy Collins and Pete Seeger just sitting there with their guitars, and you can see how just passionate they are about music and this song and each other. And so she says to him, well, this song is one you know because you wrote the melody to it. And he says, well, let me hear it. And she says, I just think it's so wonderful that this particular song, this quotation from Ecclesiastes, such a well-loved quotation. And he says, well, now I know what song that is. And they play this song just together, probably off the cuff, beautifully. And at the end, and this just got me every time when I heard him say it, he says, this really does make me proud. He says, I could die tomorrow and I die happy in a way to think that other people are singing my songs. And sing this, he says, I listened to it a bunch to see if he says song or songs. He says songs, but it's very powerful that he said it right after singing that particular song. So Judy Collins, in a 1966 performance, just by herself with her guitar, backup guitar and double bass also, she introduces the song. She says, this song was written by Pete Seeger, and the credit to it reads, Pete Seeger and Ecclesiastes, because the poem is from the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible. So in a way, Pete Seeger did public relations for the Tanakh, for the Bible, right? I think she knew it was from Ecclesiastes. People just knew. And it occurred to me that we have prayers and songs all the time, Jewish and non-Jewish songs that are pulled from the Torah or other parts of the Tanakh, different versions of Shema and V'ahavta that we sing here and other synagogues around the city and around the world. Beautiful pieces from Song of Songs or from Psalms. And I never really thought what a great honor it must be, I hope it was for Pete Seeger, to be credited as the co-author of a song along with the Torah or the Tanakh. And, scholars debate the historical authors of various books throughout the Bible, and tradition ascribes authorships of various books to kings and leaders like Moses, or that's actually Charlton Heston. Did see him in a restaurant in Los Angeles once. Or King Solomon, looking very wise there. So if Pete Seeger had been Jewish, or if he knew of our tradition of the authorship, he did know of the authorship of Kohelet. He even said that. I heard him in an interview. Maybe he said, yes, I wrote this song with King Solomon, right? Now, he might not have known the King Solomon part, but I really did. Here we go. We have the two of them collaborating together to write this song. I watched an interview it was from 12 years ago, so it must have been the year that he passed away. And he said the author's Hebrew name was Koheleth, and when the Bible was translated into Greek, they called him Ecclesiastes, which means teacher in Greek. So here we are getting Hebrew and Greek lessons from Pete Seeger. So how do we get the Byrds sing their famous version? Roger McGuinn, the member of the Byrds who arranged Judy Collins' version, he's on the tour bus. That's not their tour bus, but I thought it was funny because the bus said the Byrds, but no turkeys. He's on the tour bus, and it's July 1965 on their tour, and his girlfriend and future wife, Dolores, or she later went by the name Ianthe, she wrote this book. She requested that he play the song. So he plays it for her, but when he played it, it didn't sound like a folk song. It sounded like the Byrds style of music, like rock and roll, he said, because that's what I was programmed to do. And he realized with this sort of samba beat he added and his new take on Turn, 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 that the band should get into the studio, and they did, to record their version of it. That's them recording it right there. And of course, he never expected it to be a number one single, but really what I think he did by making it so famous and getting to be number 1 or 3 in so many countries is he brought these biblical hopes and dreams and descriptions of the ups and downs of life, adapted by Pete Seeger, into the broader culture and consciousness. And these powerful 8 verses of Kohelet became a part of so many of our minds and souls and hearts for Jews and Christians and just anyone who heard the song. One article I found in this magazine called Far Out Magazine, I read a lot of the history of this song there. It said, look, both of the versions from the Limelighters and Judy Collins were good folk songs in their own right. I agree. But the Byrds' brand of psychedelic, jangly, folk-tinged rock brought something out of the track that was missing, and that's what I think really brought the song to the masses. And I think it's this particular sound from the Byrds that many of you can probably hear in your minds now, just as I've been speaking. I think it made the song so memorable for 60 years. It took a while to get it right, though, 78 takes over 5 days. But, and Pete Seeger himself said he liked their version very much, the clang, the steel guitars that sounded like bells. And this song became number 1. 1965 was a big year. It got released in October. It became number 1 in December. In Canada, it became number 3 in November. It was a number 1 hit in Vancouver. And I find it so interesting that Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, is chanted in synagogues in the fall during the holiday of Sukkot. And the song Turn, Turn, Turn became a hit during the fall. And it's at that time when we're thinking about these themes of the seasons changing, or turning, if you will. The leaves changing color, and I think there's a connection here to Israel and nature and the agriculture holiday. I was watching a clip of Harry Belafonte inducting Pete Seeger into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And he literally said this. Harry Belafonte, he was saying, like, when I go here and I hear people singing his music, I know Pete Seeger has been there. And when I'm in Africa and this place and that place, and Harry Belafonte says, I've been to the kibbutzim in Israel, and when I move among the young settlers in the Negev, the songs they sing tell me that Pete Seeger has been there. Imagine if someone said this at a big, huge event today, right? So the last couple of things I'll share before my 20 minutes are up. So these are the words in Hebrew, right? Except for the title Turn, 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 it's really pretty much the same as what Pete Seeger gave us. He changed a couple words here and there, or just moved the order of some things a little bit to make it fit how he was doing the melody and the arrangement. It's the first 8 verses of the 3rd chapter of Kohelet. And so there's also a final line, it's not too late, right? So he added that, of course. And maybe the last thing I'll do is say that we sing Kohelet and Ruth and Song of Songs in a certain trope, a certain melody, different from Torah and Haftarah and High Holy Days and Esther. A teacher of mine in Jerusalem thinks Kohelet should have its own trope because there's such much of Kohelet, such dark and despairing themes. Everything is nothingness and despair. And the sweet sounds of the trope match better with Song of Songs and Ruth, but we have the same one for all 3, and it's beautiful. So I thought maybe, and I'll give you a taste of this, maybe we could apply the trope to the English words of Pete Seeger, like, to everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. Anyway, so I've been working on it, and maybe at a synagogue near you, you will hear the Kohelet trope to Pete Seeger's words. And I'll just leave you with the questions, or just maybe 2 questions for later on. We'll give you some questions to think about when you have time to discuss later, maybe in a small group. These are the ones I was thinking about. Maybe what your favorite lines are from the Bible chapter or the song, and if you were Pete Seeger and writing it, what observations of life would you add? Thank you. And now I'll invite up my friend and colleague, Rabbi Philip Gibbs. Okay, I'm just going to take the tie with me.
You're not going to leave it for me to put on? Good evening. I'm Philip Gibbs. I'm the rabbi of Har El in West Vancouver. And the song that I wanted to share tonight is the wedding song from the first act of Hadestown, written by Aeneas Mitchell. I like it because it's kind of funky, kind of jazzy, kind of folksy. And so I was told that we'll be able to play it. Yeah.
song. All the rivers sing along, and they're gonna break their banks for me to lay their gold around my feet. All the fashion in the pan, all the fashion for your hand. The river's gonna give us a wedding band.
Lover, tell me if you're able, who's gonna lay the wedding table? Times being what they are, dark and getting darker all the time.
Lover, when I sing my song, all the trees gonna sing along and bend their branches down to me to lay their fruit around my feet. The yawning and the apple and the sugar from the maple. And the trees gonna lay the wedding table.
Lover, tell me when we'll wed, who's gonna make the wedding bed? Times being what they are, hard and getting harder all the time.
Lover, when I sing my song, all the birds gonna sing along, and they'll come flying round to me to lay their feathers at my feet. And we'll lie down and lie down, pillow neath our heads. The birds gonna make the wedding bed, and the trees gonna lay the wedding table, and the river's gonna give us the wedding band.
So it comes, this is from the concept album that then became the musical Hadestown, which is a modern day telling of the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. And so I have to begin by acknowledging the deep irony that I'm trying to teach Torah based on a musical based on Greek myths. And so it's probably first easy to begin with the idea of what is essentially the pagan idea that we would want to stay away from. And so the story of Orpheus and Eurydice, Orpheus being the son of one of the 9 muses, was legendary for being a musician. And he married Eurydice, and this is obviously the prelude to their marriage. In the myth, Eurydice is then bitten by a snake on their wedding day, and as she goes down to Hades, Orpheus takes up his lyre, plays the entire way down to Hades, so that essentially all of the guardians stop and cry and let him pass. And Hades, the god of the underworld, is willing to let Eurydice return if they're able to make the walk up, and Orpheus does not look back. In the end, he looks back. It's tragic. It's sad. But here in that myth, it's the idea that Orpheus has this power in order to change the world around him, really having it become from his own skill, from something with him that's able to change the world. And so when I hear this song, though, what I'm listening for and what I hear, apart from the wonderful musicianship and the folksy sound, is the way that it's almost having this image that the entire world is shaped in order to bring this couple together, and that it's able to be this deep celebration and experience of love, and having the feeling that everything is coming to fill their needs. And so for me, I hear an echo of some of my favorite midrashim. And so on the sheets, and so I was going to say, it's one of the challenges with this is, it's a concept album that then became a musical that has multiple recordings. So there's different versions of which one I could play. Similarly, with this midrash, there's also different versions. That just as one rabbi had an idea and the rabbis would like to quote each other, that we see it appear in a few places. So we're not going to read every single word, but it's worth thinking about how this story and how this image reappears in a few different places. And so for the first midrash that I want to bring, it comes from the Babylonian Talmud. And here, Rabbi Shimon, son of Manasseh, is interpreting the book of Genesis. When it describes the creation of Eve, it says that God built the rib. And so that seems like a little bit of a strange use of the word building. And so what could this mean? You know, that with Adam, we hear the way that he was formed, and it seems of different action. And so they say that apart from the creation of Eve, that this specific word of building is teaching us something additional. That here it's teaching us that after God created Eve, as he was about to bring the couple together to have the first wedding in human history, that God braided Eve's hair. So just think about at that moment of having this grand image of creation, that God stops to do something essentially as caring and as intimate as braiding someone's hair. I think it's incredible that it's the idea that really there's nothing that is, that God is not too important to do something of being able to make this wedding a little more celebratory. And, they make this connection because in a few places, that if someone had a very fancy hair braid, they would call it building. And so it continues, how Rabbi Yirmiyah adds that when God brought her to Adam, that this teaches us that the Holy Blessed One acted as Adam's best man. In Hebrew, the term is shoshvin. So if you ever want to know what it is in Hebrew, you now know. And it teaches that from this, the Torah teaches us proper conduct. It is fitting for a great person to go back and serve as the best man for a less important person without feeling aggrieved. And so here in this midrash, I hear an echo of what we hear in the song, that God is able to shape the world in order to bring this couple together and celebrate their union. And so it's just something that for me was always a very beautiful image, but it's also able to show us what it means to then learn and experience Torah. And so in one of the other settings where we read about this midrash, it comes from Kohelet Rabbah, a collection of midrashim on the book of Ecclesiastes, not from the chapter where they talk about not from where they talk about turn, turn, turn. And here we have Rabbi Berechia saying that acts of loving kindness are at the beginning, middle, and the end of the Torah. We know it's at the beginning because he then quotes this midrash of saying how God braided Eve's hair and acted as Adam's best man. He continues that in the middle of the Torah, we see that God visits Abraham as he's sick, and that God also comforts Isaac after Abraham's death, and that it ends with an act of kindness, because some of the last acts, or the last action in Torah, was God burying Moses. And so from this, it's an idea that also appears in Sota, something that is, talked about often in Jewish theology. But here, it's showing that the very structure of Torah is teaching us to have that sense of care and love towards each other. And that our ways of being able to really live out the value of Torah is then showing that care to those around us. And perhaps it's here, we don't have it in the other versions of this interpretation, is an idea that by showing that love to those around us, we're able to imitate God. And I believe that through that imitation, we're able to hear and understand God. And so then for the last version, that we then have this idea, it's coming from Avot Rabbi Natan, a collection of midrashim interpreting the ideas in Pirkei Avot. And so as Shimon the Just would say, that the world stands on three things: on Torah, on the temple service, and on acts of loving kindness. That here they're interpreting, okay, what does it mean to then see perhaps Torah and acts of loving kindness in conflict? And so we have the first story. It says, if two scholars are sitting and studying Torah and a bridal party or funeral procession walks by, as long as they have enough to fulfill their need, meaning that there is a minyan to help with the burial or to celebrate the wedding, the scholars should not desist from their study. If not, they should rise and celebrate with the bride or accompany the dead. And so here, if we see an act of loving kindness and studying Torah being in conflict, which one wins? Raise your hand if you think here it's saying that the Torah study wins. Raise your hand if you think the acts of loving kindness wins. Okay, so perhaps, but in one of the most just bonkers, Shavuot that I ever read, because it becomes this idea of, there's an idea in Judaism that if you're engaged in a mitzvah, you don't have to stop to fulfill another one. And so we have a tshuva from Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, who was the Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel, that almost reads as if he had a student who invited him to his wedding. And in it, Ovadia Yosef begins talking about this idea, well, if you're engaged in a mitzvah, you're exempt from fulfilling this other mitzvah. To which he said, I'm engaged in studying Torah, and so that means that I'm exempt from celebrating with the bride and groom, so I'm not going to come to your wedding. Because, there are going to be enough people at the wedding. And so in this paragraph, it seems to be the idea that as long as there's someone else who can do the celebration, as long as someone else can do that human action of caring for others, that it's your obligation to essentially stay in the Beit Midrash and continuing studying. I always thought that was a little harsh and really found that to be perhaps, the most learned no RSVP to a wedding, but one that does seem to miss the point a little bit. Instead, we then have it continuing with another story from Rabbi Yehuda. That Rabbi Yehuda, son of Eli, oh man, I always have a typo. Rabbi Yehuda, not son of Eli, was sitting and lecturing his students. A bride passed by, and he asked his students, what was that noise? They answered, a bride is passing by. He commanded his students, my children, get up and assist the bride, as we find that the Holy Blessed One assisted the bride. And then he quotes the image of God braiding Eve's hair, serving as Adam's best man. And so he then says, if God does it, then I should certainly do it. And so I really see these two paragraphs as being in conflict. That the first one is recognizing that, yes, there's an obligation that we have those caring human moments, but someone else can always take care of that. But the second one is naming that if we have that opportunity to imitate God, to be that action of caring, then it's up for us to even pause our reading of the Torah, our studying of the Talmud, in order to go act out those actions. Then in a sort of strange ending, it says, that there was one time that the Holy Blessed One acted as Adam's best man, and from then on, humans had to find their own best men. Not quite sure what that's doing at the end, but the rest of the ideas are clear. That we're able to see within these midrashim an action that God appears in those calm, intimate moments. And so it's always the question then of what did the Jewish people hear at Mount Sinai? There's many good interpretations that really emphasize the overwhelming experience of what it was to hear God's voice. But there's many other interpretations also that recognize that just as Elijah heard God's voice as the kol demama daka, as that still small voice, that we can also find God and learn Torah in those intimate moments. And so my hope is that as we enter Shavuot, our holiday of Torah study, that it's a day where we're both able to engage our intellect, of having it be a time of learning, a time of insight, but that we don't forget the importance of the Torah of experience. That just as we were able to remember how God was really those helping hands to the first couple in the world, that so too we're able to then help others around us and to be able to then feel God's presence as we then help. And then most importantly, that through that act of helping, that we're able to then understand the deeper spirituality of what it means to be in community. And so as we'll then have time for reflection, I'll invite you to think, what have been those holy moments of when you've been able to help others, of being able to have those quiet moments, of being able to build a connection with your family, with your loved ones, and having that be a source of deeper spirituality, as well as how then are we able to then use our experience to gain a deeper understanding of Torah. So thank you, and I'll hand it off to Rabbi Moskowitz, who will also need to introduce himself.
Thank you, Rabbi Gibbs. That was terrific. So we are not wearing ties, but nobody said anything about tie-dyes. So this would be the talit that I would wear at a dead show. So. Isn't that good? And my congregation knows about the glasses too. So the song that I want to share with you this evening was written in 1970 by Jerry Garcia and Robert Hunter, and it's called Ripple. If you're unfamiliar with it, it may be because you're not a fan of the Grateful Dead, or because they actually rarely, if ever, played it live after 1980. It had just this brief kind of period. And that in itself made it very mythic and something that people were searching for and hoping for, but didn't always receive. So I want to tell you a little bit about the origin of the song, then I'm going to play the song for you, then we're going to take a look at the text study for as much time as I can. 2017. The song itself feels almost timeless. It's got a bit of a spiritual folkness to it, like it's always existed. It was written in London. In an evening when Jerry Garcia and Robert Hunter was a part of the Dead but never on stage with the Dead. He was the lyricist. And the story goes, and who knows if anybody remembers anything from those days, that they were sitting in some pub or bar drinking very cheap Greek wine. And Robert Hunter, who would write the lyrics, and Jerry Garcia would write the melody, said that he had written these 3 songs, and the songs that he wrote was Ripple, Broke Down Palace, and To Lay Me Down, 3 sort of iconic Grateful Dead songs in like an instant. And I think rabbis have had this experience often. I had it just last week. Sometimes we sit for weeks working on a drosh, a sermon, high holiday stuff, and it's like breaking teeth to get it out, and sometimes it just flows. And you're like, what did I do right there? Because it just comes out. And that was sort of the feeling that Robert Hunter, who didn't speak much and didn't like to talk about what his songs were about, explained it at one point how this sort of came to be. Ripple was one of those songs that just seemed to write itself, he later said. And that language in itself is kind of fascinating because for Shavuot, it mirrors how artists and mystics often describe revelation, not as invention, but as reception. How Torah just kind of pours into us. So I mentioned their partnership. Hunter's lyrics often drew from, he didn't write religious songs per se, and he makes no claim that this is a Jewish song or that it's deriving Jewish text, but his songs often drew lyrics from the Bible, from folk ballads, from American root music, mysticism, Jungian imagery, Zen, beat poetry, and traditional English and Celtic forms. And Ripple actually has all of that in it, as you'll hear in a moment. And the song has sort of an ancient feel to it. He wrote it in a style that's more of a folk hymn. It has a bit of an Appalachian spiritual to it. Has a kind of a campfire song sound as well, and it's all acoustic. There's no drums, and the Dead had 2 drummers, and they had this big sound. Very simple instrumentation, a mandolin, and gentle harmonies. It feels less like a rock song and more like a transmission, a transmission maybe of Torah. And that was intentional. In the 1970s, the Dead were moving away from their psychedelic roots and into more of American root music, more storytelling, more harmony in songs and singing, more folk wisdom. More of the band members were actually getting time at the microphone to sing. It wasn't just all Garcia. And they were also confronting mortality, as they had lost members of the band to the things you lose rock musicians to in the 1960s and 70s. And there was a lot of spiritual searching that was going on. As I mentioned, the song's place in Dead culture. So I can't actually properly count, but I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. I went to the Dead with my brother when I was younger, and then on my own, and then at university. I think I've attended more than 25 Grateful Dead shows with the original band members. Wasn't so into the groups that came after Jerry died. I actually was a camp counselor after my first year of rabbinical school at Hilltop Camp in part of the Wilshire Boulevard Temple camps in Malibu when the word came that Jerry died. And it was the first time that I'd ever led Kaddish for a group. And you know, there are camp counselors at a Jewish summer camp and kids, and people were wailing. And I'm like, gosh, if it's like this every time, imagine if they actually knew the person that we were doing this for. So I would go to shows, and I would hope to hear Ripple. It was one of my favorite songs, and I didn't know they were never going to play it again, because they didn't tell you that. They just didn't. And so it was this kind of, will I get it, and a bit of being dissatisfied. A little like Moses not getting to go into the promised land. But that rarity increased its mystique. Fans often sang it communally after shows, and it became associated with mourning, with transcendence, and spiritual connection. And after Jerry died in 1995, it took on this whole deeper significance and really became a soundtrack at memorials, at funerals, at communal gatherings, and moments of grief. And I just want to share this one last sort of Shavuot angle, and then we'll play the song. So get ready, Levi. Levi, get ready, but not yet. So at Sinai, according to Jewish tradition, revelation came not only as words, but as sound, thunder, vibration, and collective experience. And Ripple asks a deeply Jewish question. How does wisdom travel? Is it through argument? Is it through books? Is it through authority? Or through song, memory, and relationship? Through a shared searching together, we have that line in Pirkei Avot that when two people sit together and study Torah, the Shekhinah, the divine presence, sits with them. And studying Torah is searching for meaning. So I want to play the song. The lyrics on the last page of the handout that I think was distributed. It looks like this on the front and the lyrics on the back. And then I'm going to walk you through just a couple of verses from the song. Levi, play the song.
If my words did glow with the gold of sunshine, and my tunes were played on the harp unstrung, would you hear my voice come through the music? Would you hold it near as it were your own? It's a hand-me-down. The thoughts are broken. Perhaps they're better left unsung. I don't know. Don't really care. Let there be songs to fill the air. Ripple in still water when there is no pebble tossed, nor wind to blow. Reach out your hand. If your cup be empty, If your cup is full, may it be again, let it be known. There is a fountain that was not made by the hands of men. There is a road, no simple highway between the dawn and the dark of night. And if you go, no one may follow. That path is for your steps alone. Ripple in still water, when there is no pebble tossed, no wind to blow. You choose to lead, must follow. But if you fall alone. If you should stand, then who's to guide you? If I knew the way, I would take you home. La da da da, la da 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 da, la da da, la da, la da 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 da, la da da da, la da 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 da, la da da, la da da da.
I'm super curious, how many of you had never heard that song before? Wow. There was more than that singing. By the end, there was more than that singing for sure. And that's the infectious way I have experienced the dead. And when I spoke at the very beginning about how music is transportive, again, a word I totally made up, it takes you to a place. And I come to synagogue to be taken to that place, and sometimes I'm successful, but always at a dead show I am, or was. So I just want to break down some of the lyrics, and I may have over-prepared too many pieces to try to pick apart, so I'll get to as many as I can. So first, in the first block, which I guess is pinkish, lyric number 1. So it's a hand-me-down, the thoughts are broken, perhaps they're better left unsung. I don't care, I don't know, I don't really care. I don't really care. Let there be songs to fill the air. So music has always been a central part of spiritual life. We were talking about Psalms before, and King David writing poetry and songs, combining into words that are chanted. Torah is chanted, Psalms are sung, prayers often connect more deeply. I know when I was in rabbinical school and I wasn't yet fluent in Hebrew, that the melody was what brought me into the prayer, and only later did the words and the meaning flow. And with that sometimes became actually a bit of a cognitive dissonance, as I loved the prayer before I understood what it meant. And then I understood what it meant, and I had all these challenges. And so I would just go back to the melody and just kind of get lost in that. And so let there be songs to fill the air. For some of us, we come into synagogue, and if we change a tune, it's like you change something from Mount Sinai. Like, even though the tune, the melody had only been there since the 40s when you were in synagogue or whatever it was. And so, of course, there's the famous psalm, Psalm 96, verses 1 and 2. Sing unto God a new song. Sing unto Adonai all the earth. Sing to Adonai, bless God's name, proclaim God's salvation day after day. It's something that we're commanded to do, to sing out our voices. We sometimes get locked into the prayers of the Siddur. And what to me is beautiful about Ripple and other songs of the dead is they were never the same any night. And our prayer is not supposed to be the same. The rabbis teach us that if your prayer becomes fixed and rote, you're doing it wrong. And that the Siddur, the way that I teach it and understand it, is a springboard for the Tefillat Shebelev, the prayers of the heart. Now, for some, they are more keva than kavanah. They're more structured, and you got to say these words in this way. And on that balance, I lean more on the kavanah side. This is where we are. And there is this openness, or this opening that happens, that is launched. And I think that for me connected with Heschel and one of his famous lines, our goal should be to live life in radical amazement, just to get up with wonder in the morning and look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted, to see everything as new and miraculous. Everything is phenomenal, everything is incredible, and never treat life casually. To be spiritual is to be amazed. Just to have your eyes opened every time. So there's some questions there that you could reflect on. That was before we decided to do this the way that we're doing it. The second lyric that I wanted to point out is, there's a road, no simple highway. First of all, I sometimes think about that a lot in terms of the Jewish journey, not just the Exodus from Egypt, but whatever our journey is from here to there, it is never a straight line in life. If we've learned anything as Klei Kodesh, it is that we, in many ways, are a madrich. We're a guide helping people navigate a path that has no map. And maybe our map is the map of history and experience, but we still don't quite know what steps we have to take to get from here to there. And we often describe Judaism as a spiritual path or a journey. The word halakha, the way to go about things, the way to do things in terms of Jewish law. And of course, then, as I said, the Exodus metaphor, which is the central narrative thread of the people. Right? We retell the stories of Genesis, but it is really Yetziat Mitzrayim that returns again and again in our brachot and in our Seder, of course, but time and time again, that is the metaphor. We're in the wilderness at times. We're in narrow places of Mitzrayim. We reach the other side, and then what do we do once we've arrived there? And that spiritual world is rarely straight or simple. Judaism does not promise clarity at every moment. Instead, it asks us to keep on walking. And so there were two texts there that I thought were useful, connected for me. One is that her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all of her paths are peace. That's Proverbs speaking about Torah, which a critical reader would say some of that stuff is not so pleasant and some of it is not so peaceful. And so I struggle with that text. It's not, for me, an accurate description of Torah, but it is hopefully a description of how I would like my life to be. And then Rabbi Tarfon, it's not your responsibility to finish the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. You got to walk the walk. You got to go on the journey. You got to take the next step. But you may not get there, just like, as I said earlier, just like Moses didn't get to the promised land. Your journey may only move you or your family or your people so far along the road, but hopefully they'll keep walking in that, if it was a good direction, in that same direction. When we say that a person's memory is for a blessing, that is part and parcel of what we mean, that we keep following that path that's been laid out for us. The third lyric, you who choose to lead must follow, but if you fall alone. Let me just stop there for a second. That's the challenge of leadership, right? So one, and I've talked about this before in my congregation, you stand, you're supposed to know before whom you stand, right? And so we stand before our congregation, we stand before the Torahs and God, and so you put yourself out front, and that's the risk of leadership, because when you fall, when you lead the people astray in whatever way that you're doing, that's on you. You own that. That's the risk that comes, right? As Rabbi Spider-Man, I think, with great power comes great responsibility. And so it's lonely, but it's necessary. Moses is maybe the loneliest figure in the Torah. And he risks a tremendous amount for the flock that he is shepherding. And there are tremendous moments of isolation, and his relationship with God may not feel satisfying enough, but every leader also needs partners to do the work with. But still, you fall alone. And if you should stand, then who's to guide you? So who do you turn to when you're out front and leading, whether it's your family or in your job? I've learned that as a senior rabbi in my 13 years here, is that, I call Rabbi Bregman every now and then, like, who do I complain to? Who do I ask for advice from? And if I knew the way, I would take you home. So perhaps the most moving line in Ripple is its humility. The singer does not claim certainty. He cannot fully guide another person's journey, and yet there is a tenderness and a companionship in that searching for self, or searching in itself. And I think that's deeply Jewish. Jewish values teachers, but it also values questioning, dialogue, and shared searching. And I love this teaching from Talmud Ta'anit, that I have learned much from my teachers and more from my colleagues, but the most from my students. I feel that all the time through a bar mitzvah. Rabbi Brown being away, I'm doing the drashot with the bar mitzvah kids. I don't normally do that, and I haven't for a while. And so I'm looking at parshiot through their eyes, in a way that I just don't always see it anymore. Either it's a simplicity or it's a question that just didn't come up in my lifetime as a teenager, let's say. And so that is those moments when our students are our teachers, and our children are our teachers so often. There's that wonderful Hasidic story, which I've included here. You probably are familiar with it, about the man who's lost in the forest, and he's looking around to figure out a way out, and he can't find somebody, and then finally he finds somebody who says, "Thank God, can you show me the way out of the forest?" And the man says, "I don't know the way out either, but I know that the path that I just took is not the way. So that's the way I tell the story. Let's walk this path together, and we'll find the way out together." And then the iconic line, lyric in the song, "Ripple in still water, where there is no pebble tossed nor wind to blow." So for me, that speaks of miracle. Like, how do you get a ripple where there's no pebble and there's no wind? And that, for me, evoked Ruach Elohim, the Ruach of creation, the breath that God brings upon the earth. This out of nothingness comes something. What stilled the water? What moved the still waters? A ripple begins small but spreads outward, and we know, if we think of those concentric circles, that is a metaphor for so many things in life. Right? One small problem becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and also, that small teaching that we have made can also ripple down through the generations. A person, when you think about on Shavuot, a person who converts to Judaism in one generation of a family, and then generations later, Rabbi Bregman and I were just at the mikveh yesterday, was it? I think it was yesterday. We converted 5 members of a family. The father was Jewish. The mother had raised the children Jewish but wasn't Jewish, and they had 4 children, all going to Talmud Torah at some point or another. And we converted a whole family like that. Talk about that one little drop, and it spreads. So from that, Torah survives because human beings continue passing on wisdom and stories and music and values to one another. And that verse also invokes the first moment of creation, as I said, that Ruach Elohim. So we have the transmission of Torah, Kabbalat Torah, the transmission from Moses to Joshua and on down through the generations, ultimately to the rabbis. We reenact that on this bima, every B'nai Mitzvah, where you pass the Torah from generation to generation. That's not in Torah, but it is Torah. Right? That's not a prescribed ritual, but everybody does it because of what it so symbolically represents, which is that rippling effect. And then I mentioned the Genesis line, and then when I think about this also, I think about the candles of Hanukkah and how one candle can shed its light or use its light, but not lose its light, right? That we increase light, but we don't lose our own. And in fact, the world becomes brighter as we pass our light down through the Hanukkah and through the teachings from one generation to the next. So if you like that, the Grateful Dead have a whole catalog of music, and you could do this with just about any song. So what we'd like to do now, so first of all, thank you very much. I am totally going to wear this for services from now on. This is so comfortable. So what we'd like to do now is have you turn in Chavruta, not just to the person that you came in with, but find some people that are sitting around you that maybe you don't know or don't know so well. And any of the questions that we've raised here for you this evening in our presentations, or maybe a larger meta question, how has music been a gateway to spirituality for you? Is there a song that is Torah to you? And maybe if you're not able to reconstruct the questions that we asked tonight, we can start there. It's simple, but it's complicated. So, is there a song that is your Torah? Is there a soundtrack to your life? And how has music been a gateway to spirituality? So let's take, I think we've got 10 minutes or so. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, we'll talk. So let's take that time, but not just with the people you came with. Find somebody you don't know, have this conversation with them. B'chatzlacha. Oh, she's right here. I think that's her. No, I think that's her. Yeah. 4-minute warning. 4-minute warning. Sure. I don't know. I didn't pass them out. Here, you can take mine.
Oh, so you and I have to go. There you go. You want to do that? You do it? Why don't you do it? I hope everyone has enjoyed your charuta and your study. We're going to ask Cantor Shani to light the Yom Tov candles.
Good evening, Chag Sameach. I was thinking, reflecting on last year, and remembering that I taught very nicely. I can't remember at all what I taught. And there's a reason that I can't remember what I taught. I was feeling really miserable. I had, about a little under a week before that, had a hernia surgery. That morning, I was at the emergency room. I was one of the lucky 1% of people who have hernia surgeries who develop an infection in the surgical site. And I don't know if it was related to the surgery or if it was related to just bad luck. I also had the stomach flu. And yet somehow I managed to teach, and no one noticed that I was miserable, which I don't understand. I guess that's a sign of being at least semi-professional. And then I was thinking about the fact that here we are today, a year later. I feel great. I don't know about you. I hope everyone else does. And turn. And the meaning of Shavuot. The fact that we've just gone through the major spring holidays. And Shavuot says, goodbye spring, welcome summer. Shavuot is saying, now that we have finished this time period of rain and the beginning of flowers beginning to bloom and to blossom, now we're about to enter into this period of the fruit coming out. Now we're about to enter this time period of warmth and joy. And that's where I am. And reflecting back on exactly a year ago, feeling terrible, feeling great today, kal v'chomer, all the more so, enables me to feel even better. And I hope and I pray that we are all there together. We're going to join together in the Mariv service for the Yom Tov. And we are going to use Mishkan Tefillah in the bookshelf. Excellent. I'm going to ask our Bala Tefillah, Debbie Penson, and Cantor Shani, the cantor of Temple Sholom, to help lead us. For those of you who would like the full Matbea Tefillah, to be able to make sure that the Shema and the Amidah are traditional and complete, as they're not 100% in the Mishkan Tefillah, we have inserts for you. So feel free to take one if you are of that nature as well. What?
I just split items like into two sides.
Okay. So,
Same thing. I just sent this.
all right. Wait, do you, I guess whoever is up at the page will just call the page number?
Yeah.
Okay. Debbie, whoever's up will call the page number. Whoever's up can call the page number.
Yeah. I have my own mic, so you don't have to worry about sharing this.
Okay. Okay. Can I turn it on for the bathroom? Is that going to be weird? Can I swing that? I can swing this.
Yeah, swing it around. Swing it around. That's good.
Okay. Time to start? Oh, yeah. It's on.
That was mine, not yours. Okay.
You want to...
Okay.
What you got?
We are going to be in the festival evening part of the Siddur, and we're going to
394.
start on page 394. Please rise for the Baruch Hu.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. You can be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro mari v'ravim b'chokhmah potech shalim v'tmuna mishnei k'tim v'chol. ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, מבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המריב ערבים. אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבת. תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו לשוכבנו ובקומנו נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגע יומם ולילה, יומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננת לבניך ודיברת בם, ושבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. On your handout, you'll find the other paragraph of the Shema. We'll take a moment. Vayomer, page 462. Got to jump ahead. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Israel ve'amarta alehem ve'asu lahem tzitzit al kanfeihem לדורותם ונתנו על ציצית הכנף בטיל תכלת והיה לכם לציצית, וראיתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני, ועשיתם אותם, ולא תתורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Back to page 404. Turn to page 406 for Mi Chamocha. Mi Chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi Chamocha nedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilot osef eleh, Nora tehilot osef eleh. Malchotecha ra'u banecha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, Zelianu ve'amru, Zelianu ve'ameru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Continue silently with Hashkivenu on page 408.
וידבר משה את מודה אדוני אל בני ישראל.
Jump ahead to page 451.
I'm so glad you're here. Double pages. Okay. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ואלמד דברי קירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייך וביומך וחיי כל בית ישראל, בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב ימרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם לעולמי יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריך לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמא אמרו amen. Page 468.
Yeah, we're going to jump ahead to page 468 and continue with the Amidah silently on the following few pages through 480. שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו Shalom in Roma, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו
Kaddish Shalom, you'll find that on the handouts. Yitgadal v'yitkadosh shemei Rabba, ve'almat yivra kirutei v'yamlich machutei b'chayechonu v'yamechonu v'chayet chol beit Yisrael v'agalav yizman kariv imru Amen. Yehesh me'rava mevarach le'alam lal me'amayam יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן במה ואמרו אמן תתקבל צלותינו ואותן לכל ישראל קדם אבונו ושמיה ואמרו אמן יש לומר רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן עשה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עלינו on page 586.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Page 588. שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ ומושב יקרו בשמיים עמה ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים הוא אלוהינו אין עוד אל אלוהינו אפס זולתו ככתוב בתורתו וידעת היום אשר אותה אל לבבך כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד על כן נקבל לך ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר והי אדוני למלך
there anyone marking a yurt site this evening? Yes. You want to say? Any other yurt sites?
My grandmother.
Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. Page 598, the Mourner's Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
בעלמא דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. והגלל בזמן חביב ימרו.
Amen.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפעל ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי בקדושה.
בריחו.
לעילה מנפול ברחתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, ואמירן ועמל ומרומם.
Amen.
יהי שלמה רבה משמיה, לחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל במרומם.
Amen.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל במרומם.
Amen.
So it's my job to do announcements. I don't know the announcements for all of the synagogues here, I apologize. But I'm going to make them up. So tomorrow at Harel, at 6:30, there will be services in the morning, because Rabbi Gibbs likes waking up early. I want to wish Yesher Koach to Rabbi Gibbs and to Rabbi Dan and to Rabbi Stein for teaching this evening some beautiful and meaningful and insightful pieces of Torah. I want to thank Balat Dabi and Kanter Shani for leading us in this beautiful service this evening. And I was asked a question by my sister today, who is not as knowledgeable as I am in Jewish practice, and she said, so what's like really the thing connected to Shavuot? And I said, well, that's the problem. Really, there's no halacha. There's like nothing that it's like, not like on Passover where you're not allowed to eat chametz. And it's not like on Sukkot where you have to build a sukkah and live in the sukkah. The closest we come is there is a minhag. There's a custom of eating cheesecake on Shavuot. And what? That is not halacha. It's not halacha. So, I mean, of course, and then she asked, why is this the case? And I explained, well, Jewish tradition teaches us because we didn't have the laws of shechita, how do you say shechita again in English? I forget. Ritual slaughter. We didn't have the laws of slaughter, so we couldn't eat the meat, so therefore we eat dairy. And of course, we also know that this is the traditional time of cows giving birth and lactating in Eretz Yisrael. And so that's really probably the reason for why we have dairy at this time period. But there is a halacha for why you have to eat my wife's cheesecake tonight. Number one, there's two reasons. Number one, if you don't, I get in trouble. And you want to keep Sholom Bayit in my house. Lissa spent all of Sunday making these cheesecakes. So if you don't eat them, believe me, it's not good. Number two is in a minute you're going to hear Kiddush. And in Gemara Pesachim, in the Talmud, it tells us that you haven't actually heard Kiddush if you don't eat a meal. And how are we constituting a meal tonight? Cheesecake. Now, as you know, Kantor Shani made us be able to say, well, if you say, oh, but I'm vegan, well, we have that. And if you say, oh, but I'm gluten-free, well, we have a gluten-free vegan cheesecake. Is it sugarless, by the way? Oh, never mind. So I'm going to ask that we rise for Kiddush as Debbie leads us in Kiddush and Motzi.
Over here. I'll turn it on. Okay, you want to do it over here? Over here.
If you want to follow along, it's on page 386. I found it. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, בורא פרי הגפן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל עם ורוממנו מכל לשון וקידשנו במצוותיו. ותיתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה מועדים לשמחה, חגים וזמנים לששון, את יום חג השבועות הזה, זמן מתן תורתנו, מקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ומועדי קודשך בשמחה ובששון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש ישראל והזמנים.
אמן.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. לחיים.
לחיים. All right. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, המוציא לחם מן הארץ.
Amen.
Let's hear the free one. Okay, good. There is a custom of the host making motzi, so that the host can pass out the most, and then there's a custom of the guest actually saying Birkat Hamazon to thank the host. So we want to thank Temple Sholom for hosting us this evening, and I think we're going to sing one more song, and as we're singing that song, we're going to make our way to Kiddush. I honestly, this isn't my house, so I
It's
think
straight through those doors. We're going to
Excellent.
open those doors. Please enjoy the cheesecake. And thank you all for coming out tonight. Chag Sameach. ושמחת בחגיך והיית שמח. 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 Thanks. Oh, it's so fun.
Nice.